From a gorgeous sunny afternoon yesterday to this. It's now pouring down with rain. It was actually properly pouring down just now. This is just a bit of a light rain. We are going to attempt to find whatever we possibly can in this very, very windy and rainy weather. But I'm sure there will be something out. Maybe something like an elephant. Maybe our buffalo will come and visit. We never know. So let's carry on our way. Oh my goodness. It's like our own little private hurricane. I hope you all had a wonderful evening or a wonderful day, depending on where you are in the world. I slept quite soundly and woke up to the beautiful sound of rain, so I would be happy for it to rain this morning and then be sunny again this afternoon like it was yesterday. It's very, very, very good for the bush, and it's very good for the wildlife to have all this rain. A little bit tricky for us with our camera, but we will be okay. Oh my goodness. As I get blown away in the front here, so sorry about that. There's some lapwings flying about. And, I'm so sorry, I'm so rude. I forgot to introduce myself this morning. I'm Noelle, and I've got VM on camera, so sorry about that, everyone. VM says good morning. And don't forget, we are live, we are interactive. Hashtag Safari Live on the Twitter, or you can follow us on YouTube chat. Sorry about that, everybody. It's the wind that blew my thoughts away. Ooh, we have Impala. Now, let me just position for you. Here we go. Hello, Impala. Good morning. So we've got some females, and we've got some young males, and some older males, and some little uns, all sort of mixed in together. And now that it's not pouring, you can see this. The small ones are like, yay, good morning. So happy to be alive. Oh, there we go. Now it's just windy. The rain's let up a little bit. I can see sort of in the distance at our 12 o'clock there, Vildi, there looks like there's a bit more cloud cover that's hanging down on the horizon there. Can you see that different color? It's sort of a slate gray as opposed to a sort of yellowy gray. So while we're busy assessing the situation and seeing what we can find you, we have James in the tent, and he would love to say good morning.
That is not me. That is, of course, a small skull being fumed by Sebastian Rombi. Good morning, Sebastian.
Good morning, James.
Yes. We both woke up today feeling like we'd go for a walk, and then it started to heave out of the sky, and we decided we couldn't. My name is James Hendry. Hello. Yes, very nice. And you, of course, are the most important part of what we do, so please do talk to us using the hashtag #SafariLive on Twitter. Otherwise, you can talk to us on the YouTube chat stream. Good. We're in the tent this morning, as you can see. Let me pull my hat back slightly. This is because I'm not brave like Noelle. I've decided that, well, given my advanced age, I should probably just sit inside for the duration of this drive. In actual fact, what is going to happen is that we'll sit here for half an hour. If it continues to be sort of blustery and not particularly rainy, then we'll join Noelle in the field. But just while we're unsure of the weather, we'll stay in here. Let us begin today's safari, while Noelle tries to find something out there, with this baboon skull. Now, baboons, of course, I wouldn't say legendary animals. Many people find them fairly offensive. Many people find their habits disturbingly human. I am one of those. I quite enjoy them. But what is very interesting, of course, is that you will hear in a lot of places, especially in South Africa, that leopards like to eat baboons. And I'm going to show you why this is unlikely in many places. There is the baboon's skull. Oh dear. Where's the leopard gone? Oh, this is very distressing. Here it is. Here it is, here it is, here it is, here it is, here it is. And here, is that the leopard? Yes, it is the leopard, because that is the dog. Here is a leopard skull. Here's a female leopard. And I want you to compare, please, the size of the canines Can you see that? This is a male baboon, an old male baboon. I'll show you why I know he's old. And this is a, I would say, young female leopard. That's her there. And you can see her canines are smaller than his. In other words, he has a more formidable weaponry than she does. And for her to take on a baby baboon or a young baboon within the troop, she's often going to have to cope with a big male, because they will chase after predators that come after members of the troop. So you can see why that would be an extremely risky business, and why, when there are things like an impala or duiker or steenbok, would she go for baboons when she could have one of those things instead. The other thing to look at, and now this is an old baboon. Can you see how the bone has come away from his teeth from years of use? So not a youngster when he popped his clogs, this chap. You can see his teeth relatively worn, but not too bad. They are in the front. You can see they've been badly worn in the front, and that's from rubbing against the bottom ones. But mostly, he has got a razor, there is a razor sharp edge to his canines there. It is actually, if I pushed hard enough, it would slice the skin of my hand. And you can see there that it's been cut or occluded on the bottom, like this. Now, Becca Sue, you say, what African animal has the longest teeth? You're looking at it. As far as I'm aware, obviously, an elephant's tusks, which are the incisor teeth, whoops, I've lost a tooth here. The incisor teeth are longer than the baboon's. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, that a baboon has even longer canines than a male lion. We'll have a look at that now. Let me just put that back in there. It was his incisor. But you can see, I just quickly wanted to show you how it got so sharp. And you can see it. When it closes over there, it rubs up and down against the bottom canine. So those top canines rubbed up and down against the bottom canines every single time he opened and closed his mouth, which gave them both a razor sharp edge on either side. Formidable dagger-like weapons. So let's take this one. I keep losing my radio, sorry about that. And the lion skull, oh, we had to give it back. Yes, we had to give the lion skull back. A big male baboon will have the biggest canine, will have bigger canines than a big male lion. They're not quite as fat, but they're certainly longer and sharper. I can't think of another animal other than tusked animals like a warthog, of course, which will have longer canines, but I can't think of another animal that has teeth that size. Maybe a chimpanzee? That's possible. Where's Simon? Tim, you say. Tim, many people, of course, won't know who Simon is. I'll see if he'll talk to you, shall I? Simon? Here he is. Hello, Simon. How are you? It's been so very long since we've spoken. I've been in the Maasai Mara.
James, I don't want to hear your stories about where you've been. I've been sitting in this tent trying to find things to do. It's been closed up. There's been scorpions and snakes and all sorts of things come through here. And now you come back and you tell me you've been in the Maasai Mara? Well, I never been to the Maasai Mara. There are lots of servals in the Maasai Mara, aren't there, James?
There are, Simon, many different kinds of servals. Anyway, Simon made his debut in our television show in January and February of last year. No, of this year. And interestingly, we of course we licensed to Nat Geo Wild, of course, and one or two of the executives at Nat Geo Wild, after his first appearance, said maybe he shouldn't appear again, which I thought immeasurably made the show poorer, but that's what Simon does. Thank you, Tim, for resurrecting Simon, my alter ego. Okay, let's go back out into the field and find out how inclement the weather is with Noel.
Well, it's not raining as much, but it is definitely windy. And I can't decide if the dark matter in front means we're going to get dumped on again, or if the sun coming up behind the clouds is just giving us some pretty different colors. I have a feeling we're going to get dumped on. So maybe we'll pretend like we're in the Mara and drive away from the rain as much as possible, although I don't know how well that will work. Okay, so with this wind and with very little rain now at the moment, the predators should come prancing about. I'm still hopeful though for something like elephants or buffalo. Rhino also enjoy this weather. Warthogs enjoy this weather. They like to be nice and cool, and they'll go and roll in the mud and keep themselves even more cool. And it's also good because anything that now starts walking at this point will leave very, very fresh tracks, which will be easy to see on the road itself. So we are just going to bumble along and meander along and use our gut feeling and see what we can come up with. That's pretty much the only plan that we can have on a morning like this. The birds are starting to call, well, and by birds I mean francolins and guinea fowls. They're usually the first after the rain to stop to sort of scream their good mornings or scream their displeasure at being wet. So we might get some very good birding in this morning. Now, is everybody awake at home? Are we all watching and enjoying? Just don't forget, we love your questions and your comments. Actually, Vildy, I think let's go to Treehouse Dam. I think we're going to go there and then contemplate our movements after that. Ooh, there was a cuckoo that just flew by. Maybe you'll stop and rest for us in the open. No, of course you're not going to do that because that would be very uncuckoo-like for you. It looked like a Levellance cuckoo that flew past. I believe there's a question about who won the birding big day the other day. And Kirst, I don't know if you have the numbers with you, but as far as I know, I heard that it was us here at Djuma by maybe about 8 or 9, but we don't have the full numbers. I don't know if anyone at home has the numbers for us. Maybe someone calculated everything. We need the morning's drive as well as the afternoon drive, but I'm pretty sure that it was us. So if there's anyone with the actual scores, that would be great. I think that someone sent a message maybe to Kirst in Final Control and let us know, or possibly posted it on Twitter. We'll have to wait and see. Ooh. All right. Talked about it a little bit the other day when it was raining, but you can see on this beautiful marula tree which direction the rain was coming in. Sorry, Vildy, I slanted your view there. So, on the right-hand side of the tree is northeast, and on the left-hand side of the tree is southwest. So, the wind was blowing, as far as I can tell, sort of from the south-southwest, blowing that rain on to the tree there. So it's actually quite neat how you can see that. So if for some reason you couldn't tell where the weather was before, you can definitely tell there. Now, as it starts to lighten up, I can definitely see the gray. You all see that? That beautiful gray is a lot of cloud with a lot of moisture in it. Okay, we're going to do our best, as we always do, but this is going to be a very, very, very interesting morning. Now, with this big wind, hopefully it will just push past just enough for us to do a show for you. But while I'm busy searching for lovely animals, let's head back to James in the tent.
Well, yes, while searching for lovely animals, we are going to go back to the tent and we're going to do some what we call non-live content. That means we're going to show you a highlights clip of something that occurred yesterday, and then you are going to ask me questions about it, and I'm going to ask you questions about it, and we're going to have a talk about it. Is that okay? Good. Let's have a look.
I thought I was being I was being a bit silly, but there is a little baby there, and if you wait on him, you will see the little baby pop up. Initially, when we arrived, I thought there was a little baby, and then I thought it took too long for him to come up, and I thought maybe I was being silly. But there is in fact one, and if you wait a little while, you'll see the little head pop up just to the right of where the mummy's eye is showing there. There we go. See, so he can't hold his breath for too long, and he'll be popping up every now and then. Yes, I think there's quite a big scar on the back of this hippo, and that would, and there's actually quite, if you're looking at it now, there's quite a lot of blood there now, even now. Not just a scar, there's fresh wounds there. It's almost like this animal has had some lions going at it. I wonder. Unless it's had some fights with some of the other hippos, which is also a possibility.
And I would have said another hippo did that to her. Why he did that to her, I don't know. Suspect a bull of some sort. Maybe he got too close to the youngster and she decided she had to protect it. I don't know. I don't think it was a predator. Of course, hippo will be taken by predators from time to time, especially young ones. Maybe a lion came around and tried to get hold of the baby and then leapt on her back. But those lines across the back don't look consistent with a sort of four-clawed scrape, or even a scrape from a tooth mark. It looks like a big hippo bull has closed his mouth on her and then scraped downwards. We don't have a hippo skull in here. No, that was in the studio. It's difficult to remember where we are sometimes, Okay, so that's the story with the hippo. Now, Nina, you say, was the hippo calf nursing there? Nina, quite possibly. I don't know. You obviously have to look under the water in order to be able to see that, but they do nurse under the water, so quite possibly every time she went down there she was nursing, but it's difficult to tell. They will obviously sleep under the water, well, popping up every so often to breathe, so she could have been nursing, but not necessarily. Look at this weather. It really is quite miserable, but inspiring in some ways. Now, AKA, you're wondering if that could have been a crocodile, and I'm going to say no, I think it's highly unlikely. Crocodiles will sometimes have a go at, they'll have a go at baby hippos, but not at a big hippo like that. And I think, those wounds look like it's been a concentrated attack. A crocodile might snap once in order to chase a potentially dangerous animal away, like a hippo, but I really don't think that a crocodile would have had a go at her like that. It's not impossible. I'm just thinking about the lines down her back there, and I don't think that that's consistent with a crocodile. It looks like one big dagger-like canine that has scraped down the back, and that, of course, would be consistent with a hippo. So I think that's what's happening there. Now, let us see if we can't find something of biological interest out here. While we do that, TA, you're wondering how often you're wondering how often hippo bulls kill the youngsters. TA, infanticide is an interesting subject all on its own, and it happens a lot in mammals. There are many, many species that engage in infanticide, including our own, believe it or not. But in the hippos, I think you'll find that it's, especially in a pod like there is in Chitwa Dam, I think you'll find that it's very infrequent. And the reason for that is that it's a settled pod. They don't have a huge number of interlopers coming in and out like you might in a river system, for example, on the Sand River or on the Mara, definitely. But yes, it's entirely a possibility that that's what was being prevented there. So as a big male animal comes into his own, as he comes into his adulthood, I'm just looking around while I speak, what will happen is that he will start to assert dominance, and much the same as a male lion coming into a new area could quite possibly kill kill young cubs belonging to another male when they come into an area. So a young bull hippo coming into his own may do exactly the same thing. It happens in the chimpanzees. It certainly used to happen with human beings, and it's often not as direct with human beings. But for example, in some societies where there is a death of the father, or a mother and child have to extract for some reason if she attaches herself to another man, quite often, while he won't kill the child, overtly, he can do it covertly by just not providing. And so it does happen in every single mammal species, just about. Very interesting. I can't find anything of a huge note right now, so let's have a look at this rather old and rotted tuber. See what it looks like under the microscope. Sebastian, I think we have a small problem with this barrel. Never mind, we'll sort that out later. Okay. Now, for those of you who don't know, perhaps you're a new viewer, this is one of my favourite things out here, and that is the microscope, because we get to have a nice close look at things here. This is a tuber of a lily species, I think, and I'm just wondering if in its rotting it hasn't picked up something interesting inside. The best thing to look at, of course, is living creatures, small living creatures that then move around. Yeah, it's not particularly inspiring. Couple of hairs, you can see the fibres there. They've made quite a useful fibrous or fibre making implement for pioneers in this area or for local people. As far as I'm aware, good eating, almost certainly toxic. And I think it's from a crinum lily, if I'm not mistaken. This is amazing, even just looking at it at the scale. Look at the stones. The little scale of stones there. Isn't it pretty? I think it's very pretty. Little hairs. You can see the vascular tissue that used to feed this plant. It's all those horizontal lines that you can see there. Well, vertical for the plant. Just amazing. I'll have a little look down there, and then I think we will be done with this rotting tuber. Okay, we can get rid of this. Colbert, you say, what type of lily species do we have here? Well, it just so happens I have my wildflower book. I must confess, not my favourite book on account of the fact that I don't think I've ever found a flower that occurs here in this book. Let's just look up the lilies for the sake of it. We get things called crinum lilies, or candy striped lilies, which look unsurprisingly like they are candy striped. We get, would we call the bouffane disticha a lily? We might. It's a toxic sort of a lily. We probably get 5 or 6 species. The fire lily, says Kirsten. I'm not sure what she means, but we can find out, I suppose, at some stage. I shall ask her. 1 second, everybody. You can see I haven't used this book very extensively. It's not particularly easy to use. L-I for lily. Yes? No, not one. That's astounding. Alright, let's go to the crinums. Okay, crinum. Sebastian, I know this is embarrassing, but sometimes we must just suck it up because, well, it must be the book's fault. It can't be my fault exactly. Crinum. Crinum, there we go. Number 60. Amaryllis. Ah, yes, I think the bouffin is. Alright, so here are a whole lot of lilies. Let's have a look at them and see how many of them we find here. There they are. None of those occur here. I'm just looking at the maps. Claviers, they don't occur here. My mother has many claviers in her in her garden. Scodoxus, we definitely find Scodoxus species, probably Scodoxus multiflorus here, number 2. That's over there. And they're apparently extremely toxic. They're not very good for you. You shouldn't eat them. They will make you deeply ill. So that's the only one on this page that we have here, Scodoxus multiflorus. Then a ground lily. Yes, I've seen a ground lily like that. It's probably more in the slightly drier areas. But it's the crinum lilies that are the really pretty ones. So here's one of them, Crinum macawani, or the river lily. I'm not sure that I've seen that one here, but I most certainly have seen something that looks very like this, although the distribution map says it's not here. Let me just keep looking at the crinums. Oh, you see, this is why this book is difficult for me to use. There is a crinum that looks like this. It looks like that candy-striped crinum. This particular one is not around. It's only found in the sort of desert regions of central South Africa. But we definitely get one like that. So those are very pretty. And then I think that's probably about it. Yeah, so 3 or 4 lily species. Very nice. Very pretty indeed. Marvellous. Good. There it is. Now, Noel has managed to find yet more water, but this time it is not heaving from the sky.
It's true, James. I did. I found some water inside of Treehouse Dam, but what we're really waiting for is a curious little hippo who's managed to come in here. Now, I didn't realize just how deep Treehouse Dam was until we pulled up and we heard a little hippo grunt, and then we've come around the corner, and I'm gonna say he, because it's by itself, but it's not hard and fast. He's just sticking his little nose up like this every now and then. So I think we're just gonna keep a bit of an eye here. See if he'll come up again. Look, it's chilly outside. He's nice and warm inside of the water there, covered in his copious layer of fat that insulates him, very similar to how a whale functions, or a dugong, or a manatee, or even, I would imagine, how a walrus would function as well. Now, I was up at Biffleshoek Dam yesterday and I didn't see the hippo up there. And the past couple times I've been up, I haven't really seen him, so I wonder if possibly it's that male that's meandered down this way, or it could be a male from somewhere else. They do travel quite far, and the rainier it gets during the rainy season, the more water we have, the more space it gives, especially younger males, if not older males that have been kicked out, places for them to go. Now, I worked with a tracker who used to say on days like today, don't even bother to go see hippo, and you can all see why. They stay under the water for sort of 10 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer, and again, with this sort of windy weather, they feel no need to be outside as much as you would think. They'll just take a little nose up and breathe, and then go back down, a little nose up and breathe, and then back down until it warms up a bit. We did have a little ray of sun that poked through the clouds, but then the cloud cover has come over, so I'm going to predict that this afternoon will probably be similar to yesterday afternoon, so nice and sunny, but you never know. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes down here, especially this time of year. So we also had our blacksmith lapwing, but he, or she rather I should say, has meandered quite far off. I don't really know if we're going to be able to pick it up nicely, but you can see that white, how much the white pops out into the in the bush there. I would imagine that the youngster is just underneath by the way that it is sitting. And one of the things that you'll notice about that white popping out is this is one of the reasons why when we do we just missed our hippo shave, sorry. There you can see the ripples from his little nose that just popped up, and he's gone back under again. So one of the reasons why we don't wear white in the bush is because of how much that color popped out there. It really draws attention. One of the reasons why we wear the colors that we wear is to sort of blend in with our surroundings. Alright, oh, there's the little nose again. Nope, he doesn't want to be seen on camera. Joy, you're curious about what happens to hippos during drought. Joy, if there's absolutely no water, they will move towards water, and they can move tens, if not hundreds of kilometers. If there's water, but it's just a little bit of water, they fight. They fight over that little bit of water, and they do their best to keep themselves submerged. They don't always manage to find water that covers their whole bodies, but as long as they can have a little bit, they'll do okay. In Zambia, I know I talk about Zambia often, but where I was working up there at South Luangwa National Park, you find these mud pans with water pans that turn into mud pans, and some of the males will stay in there as long as they possibly can, sort of only half their body submerged, until they absolutely need to push towards the river. And when the river just has a little bit, they do all try to pool together in the eddies as much as possible. But with males being so territorial, it causes a lot of territorial fights, and sometimes they unfortunately just pass away from it. Females are also quite territorial. If other females start trying to move into their area, especially if the females that are already there have youngsters, they'll also fight quite a bit from that. So it is very difficult during drought. Now, a very severe drought where there's hardly any water, the populations of hippos would just decrease massively, as similar to what happened with the buffalo species last year with our drought. And unfortunately, it's just something that happens. There's his little nose, and then down again. Alright, you don't want to be seen today, my friend. We will leave you in peace then. And carry on. It has stopped raining for now, which is good. A few drops every now and then. And I'm really hoping that some of our leopard friends decide to pop around. We never ended up finding Tundi yesterday afternoon. Shame Herbie worked so hard, but she just managed to get into that area, kill what we think was a little warthog, and then she moved off. And unfortunately, with the way that the soil was, it was extremely difficult tracking, and I'm hoping possibly this morning we pick up on more fresh tracks from her. But if I were her, with that kind of rain and this kind of wind, and if I'd had a small meal last night, I'd probably be tucked inside my little den site with my cubs and having a bit of a snooze. But that's just me. I am excited though about how these roads look, because again, as I said earlier, anything that moves is going to leave some really beautiful tracks, and they'll be quite prominent and a little bit easier to work with than what will happen this afternoon. If the sun comes out, it'll bake the ground very, very hard, and then tracking will be more difficult. Kirst, I'm so sorry. For some reason, you broke up a little bit there. Ooh, James has some caterpillars he would like to show you. Let's head on over to him.
Yes, I do have some caterpillars I'd like to show you. Somebody was asking if we have any caterpillars at the moment, and we do. Michael, that was you. I don't think this is going to reach. Let's see. If it doesn't, I'll just fetch one for you. But there's a whole bunch of them over here.
Yeah, we got.
Okay, we're all right. Here we are. Look at this astonishing bunch of caterpillars sitting up against this combretum bush. Isn't that cool? Kirsten has come up with a collective noun for them. She says they are a cuddle of caterpillars.
That's cute.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Now, one is tempted to say that they are living like this because they want warmth. But I can't imagine they're producing a massive amount of metabolic heat that could be warming them up. But perhaps they are. I think it's more likely that they're sitting on the end of this branch looking like this because they don't actually look like individual caterpillars. And what it probably does is makes possible predators avoid them. This bunch being particularly reticent, maybe they had a heavy weekend. These guys seem to be a lot more productive. No, we run out of space, have we? Anyway, here these chaps are. They're starting to move around a bit. And if you look at the branches on which they're sitting, they've denuded them completely of leaves. So I suspect as it gets lighter and, well, hopefully today slightly warmer, they will move off down the branch and start to eat, and then perhaps as it gets dark, they come up towards the end, and that's where they lurk for the night. I also wonder if they aren't eating each other. Oopsie. Oh, shame. Don't worry. I'll put them back. That's really not great. I'm sorry, little caterpillar. Come back here. Come on. I'm sorry to have done that to you. Here, have some fresh food. There you are. Yum, yum. I think there were another two. I'm just going to put them back on. It always makes me feel a bit bad when something like that happens. There you are. And one more. Oh no, there are a whole lot more. We lost about 5 there. Red, you say, what are those spikes sticking out of their bodies? Red, well, the spikes sticking out of their bodies are defensive mechanisms. If you put one of these caterpillars into your shirt, you would be very uncomfortable. They would make you very itchy. On the hand, it doesn't seem to make a huge difference, but certainly if you put them onto your shirt or onto the skin of your back or your front, they would leave it in sort of hives or welts, and so they're for defense. They just make themselves slightly distasteful. Oh, come on, get back on your leafy. There you are. There all your friends are. Well done. Anyway, those are the caterpillars. We looked at them under the microscope the other day, not sure what they are. And I think if we look... Oh, this is going to be quite fun. Let me break this off so I'll bring it. This is where they hatched from, I think. There's a little thing of open eggs here. Let's go and look at these under the microscope. I wonder if that isn't the matrix of eggs from which they came. They're obviously getting a bit bigger now, and I don't know what species they are. Some sort of moth, we think. Alrighty, let's go and have a look at those under the microscope. Seb's just going to detach and detangle himself. He's managed to wrap the wire around 5 or 6 poles, trees, grasses, ropes. Ooh. So there you can see the two sort of white pale, or the pale ones there, have definitely hatched. And I think if I turn this over, you'll probably find that the rest of them have as well. Let's just flip it over. Yeah, there we are. And there are the two that have been opened the other side. So I'm pretty sure that's what those are. And they've obviously grown substantially since they hatched out of these tiny little things. I mean, these things are about, I don't know, about 1/4 of a millimetre across each in diameter. Absolutely perfect spheres. Isn't that nice? Let's just put them back there. Perfect spheres, and arranged so neatly that one really does wonder how on earth nature came up with a brainless animal like a moth that is able to create such perfect symmetry, when I, with a relatively large brain compared with the moth's, am unable to draw so much as a circle. It really is quite amazing. Anyway, these are the mysteries we ponder on rainy days here in the wilderness. I'm sure you're all pondering them as we speak. Are you pondering them? Jamie, you're wondering what kind of butterfly they'll turn into. I don't think they will turn into a butterfly. I think these are moths. Why do I say that? You know, often often those hairy caterpillars are moths. Often they are not butterflies at all. They could turn into butterflies, but it seems to me that the hairy ones normally turn into moths, and the smoother ones often turn into butterflies. Which moth that is, I'm afraid I am unable to say to you. Now, Mama Slab, you want to know what the most poisonous caterpillars we have here are. I'm going to say, I guess, I'm trying to think of something more exotic, but I don't think I can. I think it's probably the monarch butterflies, caterpillars. They live on milkweed and other very toxic plants where there is milky latex that has various kinds of toxins, both to human beings and to their predators. So I think you'll probably find that the most toxic caterpillars out here are the monarch butterflies. The most toxic insect, however, and I naturally don't have the book with me, the most toxic insect we think that we get out here is the larva of the, what's it called? Oh dear, I've lost the name. It's a sort of jumping beetle that lives on the Gruvia gwenzii trees. Oh, come on, what's it called? It's got long back legs and it jumps. Is it called a frog beetle? I can't believe I've forgotten it. Anyway, the larva of the beetle used to be used by the bushmen of the area to poison their arrows. When they went hunting, they would have little bows and arrows, and it was interesting. They're small bows like that, not the kind of great long bows that you imagine hunting deer with or something like that if you happen to be back in prehistory. The idea of doing it right now is quite sickening to me, but some people like that sort of thing. But the bushmen just used to use a little bow like that, and they'd sneak very close to their prey. They couldn't shoot them over huge distances, but they'd then poison the arrow tip, and they'd just be little tick, and you could see the sort of kudu going, not really knowing what's happened, and then that poison would work its way into the body and eventually tie them sufficiently for the bushmen to catch up and then slit their throats or stab them with a spear or something like that. I don't mean to be unpleasant, but you know, everyone has to eat. Yes. A larva of a chrysomeliid beetle. I don't remember the Latin name. Does that have a common name? No, you can't find it. This is Kirsten trying to help me and actually just embarrassing me. It's so embarrassing that I can't remember it. It happens every single summer we come around because I forget these things. I know what plant they live on. I know what they look like. They're sort of a pinkish coppery colour with a bit of black on them. Flea beetle. Yeah. There we go. It's a flea beetle. It's called a flea beetle because they jump so much. So if that is what they are Latin-wise, Kirsten, then yes, you're absolutely correct. Good. Okay. Shall we head outside and see what else we can find? Joy, you're wondering the difference between a moth and a butterfly. Joy, the difference between a moth and a butterfly is... I'm just trying to think of a more biological answer to give you other than the one that I'm going to, and I can't right now. So I will just say to you that a butterfly has got... When it rests with its wings up, so folded upwards, not sort of resting down like a moth does. A butterfly also has not got a combed antenna, so a male moth will have what looks like two great big combs on its antenna. That helps it to pick up the pheromones from the females that it may or may not come across. A butterfly often has a clubbed antenna. And other than that, there are not enormous differences. Yes, butterflies are normally diurnal, normally more brightly coloured, but you do get diurnal moths that are brightly coloured as well. And yeah, they're very similar. But those are the two major differences, the antenna and the way that the wings rest. Okay, Noelle has managed to find herself a riverbed that is devoid of water. Let us go and find out what else is there.
Yeah, so not much rain. A little bit drizzle has popped back in, but also very, very quiet out in the bush with this very cold and windy and wet weather. So we're still making our rounds. We ended up over by Twin Dams. We did a little bit of the Mulwati. We are now heading back to the area where Herbie had those wonderful tracks for Tundi, and seeing what we can come up with. But even the bird life has been, not, I would say quiet, but they are not sitting still for us, that's for sure. It's a bit too windy. They're having trouble hanging on to their perches, so they're moving from perch to perch to perch. And most of the raptors that we usually see in this area also seem to be hunkered down. I'm thinking that if this cloud cover keeps lifting, that possibly in about an hour, things will start making their debut for the morning. But that is just a guesstimate. Alright, come out, come out. We even had kudu, which usually sits still for us. The kudu moved off quickly with the sound of our vehicle and with this wind. But as I'm cresting up onto this little hill, things seem to be brightening up over to the east. Okay. Hear a few rattling testiculars. Just want to stop for a second when we get to the top here and just listen for a little bit. And see if we can hear any audio territory markings from absolutely anything, or maybe some elephant sounds. Or even just some nice bird song. All right. The wind is rustling through the leaves. Some dark-capped bulbuls in the background. Some gray-headed sparrows. Some francolins. Guinea fowls. Some frogs far in the distance. Everything's slowly starting to wake up. Very slowly. I think let's just give it a minute or two. Anna Marie, you're curious if the wind deters the predators from hunting? Definitely not. The wind is actually something that aids them in hunting, especially on a morning like this morning. What the wind will actually do is it makes the prey species have an absolute heart attack, because with the wind they can't smell or hear properly. It takes away those two senses, and those are their main senses that they use. They don't use their eyesight as much. They obviously can see, but they trust their nose, their sense of smell, and their hearing much better than they do their eyesight. So this is very good hunting weather for predators, and not very nice weather for the prey, unfortunately. That is most likely why we're seeing very little, because they know they need to hide and get into a spot that allows them to feel safe, for sure. And then if the prey is hiding inside of the thick areas, and if there are predators about, they're going to be moving through thick areas. But that being said, if they're not hunting and they need to scent mark, you would find them more on roads and pathways, because they use those to demarcate their territory. All right. And of course, Egyptian geese in the background. There's always an Egyptian goose, or a hadida. Michael, I believe your question was if the rain was good for hunting for the predators as well. And as long as it's not a heavy rain, sort of a light rain, yeah, they'll definitely use it. It really masks their ability to, or it masks their scent, and they're moving around. But I actually got your question wrong, so please excuse me. You're asking, the rain with birds of prey, does it aid? No, it doesn't aid them at all. Birds, when it's raining, their feathers get wet, which makes them heavier, which makes it harder to fly. So it doesn't aid them. They're going to go hide. They're going to hide until they can dry off. And then if they have been rained on through the night, like they were last night / this morning, they're going to wait till it's a little bit warmer and they can actually dry their feathers off so that they can fly properly. Sorry about confusing your question there, Michael. I hope I managed to get it in the end. Nice and answered for you. Hello, Egyptian geese. Keep the questions coming, everybody, because whilst I am busy trying to find something to show you, I think let's have a nice chat, because everything else is hiding. And it is also Monday morning, so maybe they don't want to come out. Lady Starfire, are you asking about where the leopards have gone on Juma? Because I'm also wondering the same thing. Oh, the zebra. Sorry, Lady Starfire. I don't know what is going on with my ear today. The zebras, with this type of rain, that means that there's going to be good food and water throughout an area that's not just on Juma. They're going to be spreading out more, and they're just going to be where they think the best chances of getting the best grazing and best drinking is. And unfortunately, for us in the Lowveld in general, especially in sort of the Northern Sands area, sorry for the bumps, for this time of year is a very difficult time of year to see zebra. There's a lot of thick bush that they can be in, and again, there's lots of good grazing after this rain and lots of water for them to drink. And a lot of the water for them to drink is going to be in seasonal pans that fill up with rainwater that are inside these thickets, so we will have a harder time seeing them. I've seen a few tracks around, but nothing that has lended for us to actually get a nice visual for you, unfortunately. But if I do see some zebra, I will make sure to give you a shout. Well, the woodland kingfishers are out, that's for sure. And our rollers are out. We have a nice little lilac-breasted roller. I just want to position for us. The colors are not as beautiful as they normally would be in this light, but you might be asking, well then how can I tell it's a lilac-breasted roller? You can tell by the way that the tail looks. You can see those two little short streamers, not too long streamers like a racket-tailed. I also don't believe that we get racket-tailed in this area. And then a very, very thick beak. So we're looking at the jizz of the animal, the general indication of a size and shape. And then you fly off. You're not allowing me to finish my thought there, buddy. But you are flying to a much better spot to actually see your beautiful colors. There we go. And moved over to sort of the western side of the road, so away from where the sun would be if the clouds weren't there. Well, the sun's still there, but the clouds are hiding there. And there you can see the gorgeous colors. And you can see just quite how wet this poor lilac-breasted roller is. There's two woodland kingfisher that are flying overhead that are having an absolute fit. So now the rain has stopped a little bit. It is a tiny, tiny, tiny bit warmer because the sun's up behind the clouds. It's still windy, but basically anything that needs to call for territory, birds included, are now starting up. And that is why those woodland are carrying on the way that they are. They also still are looking for mates and advertising themselves. And this lilac-breasted roller is just hanging on for dear life. It can barely fly off there, shame. Ooh, Debbie, you're asking if we can find some frogs for you. Yeah, we can go frogging. As you ask, we're by a tiny little bit of water. Now, usually, when you drive up, to water like this, if they were in here, they would stop moving and they would dive underneath. And I can hear some calling in the background here. So, Debbie, what I will do is I'm going to listen as we're driving along, and when I find a nice spot, I'll see if I can definitely do some frogging for you. Now, I believe Paige was asking, why do frogs come out when it rains? So, Paige, the more moist that it is, the more the more wet that it is, allows for frogs to function better. They cannot function without the moisture. And so when it has rained like it has, or when it's cooler and they have a nice body of water to be in, they feel free to use their energy to advertise that they're there, and thus calling. And then with nice heavy rain like we had this morning, then they can move a little bit farther afield because their bodies will not dehydrate. If they try and move around when there is no moisture, or even the thought of moisture, they will dehydrate and die pretty much. So that's why. No, all the bird calls have stopped. There are no more frog calls, but we'll get there eventually. Eventually something will pop up for us. B. Wilson, you're curious about our buffalo that we saw yesterday, whether or not they've moved away from Juma. So B. Wilson, Juma is a beautiful property to function on, but it's not a property that allows for a herd of the size that we saw the other day to stay here forever. They need more space. They need the ability to go to different areas. Also, the longer they stay in our little corner of the world, the more they'll be predated upon. So they need to move around in a larger area. So they've moved away from where I can physically drive in this area, but they haven't moved too far. They've just gone to our north. Now, unfortunately, where they moved to the north is also where the Nkuhumas are. So they didn't plan that properly, but that's pretty much how the bush works. So they'll be back eventually. We'll start seeing them more. As more and more herds move through, we get a higher and higher chance of seeing them. And we hopefully will start seeing those larger herds moving through as this rain keeps coming and giving us such a wonderful, wonderful green grass for them to eat. Now, what I would like to know is, when are the cheetah going to come back? The cheetah populations in the Lowveld are low in general at the moment. With population numbers, you get peaks and you get valleys, and the cheetah population number are in a valley at the moment. And that valley has a lot to do with the fact that our lion and leopard populations in this whole area are peaking. And as you know, predators do not like each other, and so those numbers do directly affect each other. They especially with cheetah, as they are a apex predator, but at the bottom end of the apex predator hierarchy, it is a little bit harder for them when something large like a lion or something stronger like a leopard, when their population numbers are bigger. Alright, James has managed, I believe, if I heard correctly, to get out of the tent and onto a vehicle so that he can come and investigate Juma with me this morning. Let's head on over to him.
Well, this is definitely not James. Slightly taller, definitely more hair, and about 2,000 miles away in Kenya, in the Maasai Mara, and it is a very different morning here. This is the first morning we've seen the really thick mists on the Mara floor, and Jahawi, who's been guiding here for quite a few years, told me that some mornings you can't even see 10 meters in front of you from the mists. We're sitting above the mist at the moment, but we are about to descend into that wall of white. Isn't it absolutely beautiful, though? And it is a stunning morning. Sorry we're a bit late. Our tech team was fighting some gremlins. My name is Brent Smith, and I have Manu on camera. And just before we move a meter, we need to hear from Manu. Manu, who won the big cat spotting competition? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The end score was 5-3. 5-3. Okay, so we just had to make sure that all was well in the world between presenters and cameramen. You can't let cameramen start thinking they can spot better than us. Okay, it was a bit close. I was a bit worried there. It was 3-3 for quite a long time. But it is a beautiful morning. We're going to start meandering down the hill into the mists to see what we can find. Now, I was thinking I might stay above the mist. This mist is not great for cameras. It tends to mist up the lens. And there's two things I want to check on this morning. I definitely want to go back to that hyena, the hyenas that were feeding off that buffalo that was floating in the water, and see if we can find some more hyenas bobbing for rotten flesh. And I also want to go see if we can find that juvenile palm nut vulture again. That was down towards Djuma. Well, what else can we see? Well, we never know. That's the joy about being on a live African safari. My name is, oh, sorry, I meant to say hashtag Safari Live. If you have any questions, we are up sometimes, but it is very exciting. So it sounds...
Right, yes, that sounds like you're going to get a black screen. Well, here we are, back at Djuma. We are out of the tent. Well, we're in a mobile tent now, really. And that is a Natal francolin, or Natal spurfowl, so known because of these spurs on the back of its leg. You see that? That is why it is called a spurfowl. It uses those spurs to fight off rival males. Now, the other day somebody was asking, what is the first bird that you hear in the mornings? Often it's a francolin. Most often it is a grey-headed sparrow. That one is complaining bitterly about the weather. Either that or the one behind it has just told a joke. You can see it laughing. Lots of birdsong, which is odd for this sort of weather. Rattling cisticolas, magpie shrikes, crested francolins. Let's just sneak a little bit forward. There's some other birdies up there. We'll see if the crested francolin, at least the cisticolas, are not alarm calling at a bevy of leopards that might be lurking in the bushes here. Maybe. We'll just stop on this hump. Spurfowl now running down the road. I think they're having a bit of a domestic. There you can hear the magpie shrikes. White-browed scrub robins calling. Oh, that one just relieved himself. Well, it's nice to get that out early on in the day. These two are just playing at each other. I think they're both males. I don't think the females have got such pronounced spurs on their legs. Let me just check that. I might be talking rubbish. They're quite fun though, aren't they? Here we go. Philip, you ask a good question. You say, are lapwings and francolins the most common birds here? Yeah, I guess they probably are, you know. No, I don't think the lapwings are. Maybe the francolins might be the most common birds. They do seem to be all over the place. Maybe something like a rattling cisticola. I mean, obviously, when the quilias are in town, they're probably the most common. There it is, the Natal francolin. Should be known as a spurfowl, I thought. I might just have to check that up on my app. Let me just look here. Blah 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 blah. No, it doesn't say anything about the spur. So I might have to go back towards, that's him there. I might have to go back to the app and see if we can't find something on that. I quite like the old school book for pictures. pictures. It doesn't have the glare of the screen, but also, of course, it doesn't update itself like the app does, which is rather disappointing. You know, that book's been the same as it is now for the last 12 years or so. In fact, even longer than that. Let me consult the app. I'm sorry, while we drive I'll do it. And you don't have to. You must never do this, by the way. You must never drive and do what I'm doing now. It's only once you've been trained for a very long time that you're able to look at a bird app and drive at the same time. Do not drive down the highways of New York or Los Angeles, Chicago, wherever you happen to find yourself, looking at your Roberts Bird app. I think the authorities would take a particularly dim view on it. Yes, it isn't. It's definitely a spur fowl at the moment, and tell spur fowl. Sexes alike, male greater than the female. That just means greater in size, of course, doesn't mean greater in stature. Lack of red eyes. No, they've both got the spur. Interesting. Okay. Our plan from here is to try and go to the hyena den and see if we can't find some kind of action there. Sebastian and I have failed to find any hyenas there in our last 2 visits. We're hoping today for some sort of change. And apparently many of you worried about where Gwen is. Yes, I mean, look, it's been so long since I've actually engaged with our hyena characters that I'm not sure I'd recognize any of them, so you may have to help me again. And certainly it seemed that when we were last there, and by we I mean the collective Wild Earth we, and you of course, it looked like the cubs were not doing so well, especially the littler one. Looked like it may have been falling victim to some bullying, which of course in hyena society can often mean falling victim to death, which is, no one wants to fall victim to that, really. Cheetah, what a nice question, and it is one that I like to talk about a lot. You say, have we not affected wildlife or accidentally affected wildlife by just being here? Almost certainly, absolutely we have. And it's not even by accident in some places, or in some lot of regions in the Kruger Park. For example, artificial water provision makes a massive difference to wildlife, from the smallest insect to the grasses to the trees to the distribution of mammals. Putting water or taking water out of a place will have a major impact on the landscape and on the suite of species that occur in that area. By just walking through the air, so let's take water provision out of it, let's take just driving. These roads alter the movements of animals profoundly, because animals will use the roads far more than they'll use the bush, for the same reasons that we do, because it's much easier. And so their paths through, one doesn't want to get too philosophical or ethereal if you like, but their paths through this life are inescapably changed by our paths that we have designed through areas like this. Let's take the roads out of here and let's just put the vehicles. Let's pretend we didn't have roads. Do we affect animals when we're around them in cars? Yes, almost certainly we do. Is it a negative effect? No, I don't think it is very often. Sometimes it is, but not very often. And then we can take the cars out, and let's say if human beings were just here and we used this as a wilderness area and we walked through the area, would we have an effect? Yes, we would certainly have an effect. Every animal that we come across reacts to us in a certain way. And I mean, let's just think about if we were walking across a clearing and we came across a young impala baby. And in fact, we saw this happen the other day. And the impala perhaps had just given birth. And she then saw the human being and ran away from her youngster, maybe to come back later, but ran away for a while. The effect on that youngster must be profound, and it could be, profound enough to the effect that if there was a predator nearby, the predator would leap on the baby because we'd been there. And we've actually watched that. We've seen that happen a few days ago, not with a predator, but certainly that the mother detached from the youngster, just born, couldn't stand yet because of human presence. And we saw Jamie and I think it was David last year were watching a baby impala and saying how cute and sweet it was when Karula leapt out of the grass. She was a leopardess who we used to see, leapt out of the grass, jumped on the baby impala and killed it. Would that have happened in the absence of our presence? Would the impala have perhaps spotted the leopard without us being there? Quite possibly. So yes, we do have an effect, absolutely. But the big thing is our effect, well, I mean, there are a number of questions you can ask, but the big question we ask ourselves every day is our effect on the wilderness more disadvantageous to it than the advantages of showcasing it to the world and what we do? And as long as we can say that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, then we'll carry on doing what we're doing. Does that make sense? So we've arrived at the hyena den. It does not seem to be a great hive of activity. Michael, you say the last time we saw Gwen on drive was the 1st of November. Well, that is some time ago, is it not? That is 27 days ago now. And then Chris Rogue, you reckon we saw her on the Djuma cam on the 13th of November. Now I'm afraid there's nothing going on here. This is not surprising because it is wet and miserable, and if the adults were away, well, then the youngsters would probably be inside. What is unfortunate, however, is the distinct lack of any sort of fresh track around here. It doesn't look to me like there's been activity here for some time. It's quite possible, however, that the heavy rain we had this morning has just wiped away any tracks there may have been from the evening or the day before. Now Gwen, of course, we think was a very low-ranking female in the clan, and maybe something has happened to her. Anyway, time will tell, I suppose. Often time doesn't actually tell. What it does is it just makes us draw various conclusions, and we never actually manage to get closure, if you like. Same thing happened with Karula. Okay, let's go back across to Noel. I'm going to head up onto the northern boundary, see if anything's come across there. We're staying with me, looking gormlessly into the lens. Let's carry on. And we don't have the Mara, so you're stuck with me, I'm afraid. There's something else I wanted to say about that human impact thing. Oh, the other thing is, so we've asked ourselves the questions, are we being more disadvantageous or advantageous to the wilderness? And for the moment we're able to say we think that we're being more advantageous. But I guess then there is the question of, what about the ethics of it? Do we have a right to be here? Do we have a right to interfere? Do we have a right to walk through the bush or drive through the bush or build lodges here? And I think for every single person in the world, you'd probably get a different answer to anybody who's ever bothered to think about it. And I prevaricate. My impression or my attitude to it has very much changed over the years. When I arrived fresh out of university as a young guide north of us here at a place called Angama, I had a very scientific outlook. Well, I mean, I don't think I've ever been a very good scientist, but I had a very scientific, I suppose, philosophy on things out here, that we should take a completely detached approach, that any impact we had was bad and needed to be mitigated in absolutely as far as possible, and that we as human beings were not part of the wilderness that we came to observe, and so we shouldn't try and interact with it at all. And slowly that has changed over the years, because I have come to realize and come to appreciate that we as human beings are part of the wilderness, and so our presence here is not something necessarily that we need to feel bad about, if you know what I mean. So I always felt a little bit at the beginning of my career like we were here as guests as opposed to being here as participants. And I think that if we look at ourselves as participants, we perhaps treat the real wilderness with even more respect than we might if we thought of ourselves purely as guests. You could make that your mind up on that yourselves. All right, Giraffe has managed to find herself a Noel.
It's true, James. A giraffe has managed to find me. Thank goodness. So, giraffes. Yes, we saw a male earlier, and Vildy was still in his in his cage, but we have unlocked Vildy from his cage so that it's a little bit easier for us to show you what's around us. And I've managed to find another male giraffe who is standing very beautifully and very tall. So as we know, this is the largest, or I should say tallest, mammal on land, and the tallest mammal we will find definitely here, if it's the tallest mammal on land. Some beautiful little oxpeckers on his back. Oxpeckers have an interesting tail that's very stiff. It allows them to travel along the body, as you can see there, and grip. It's kind of like a third leg. And this one on the back there looks as if he's using his stiff tail to be able to adjust himself against the wind and from being wet to try and dry himself as much as possible. I'm sure he's been hanging onto that giraffe through most of the morning. Now it's interesting, at night these oxpeckers will not stay on the giraffe. They will go and roost or go to their nests inside of holes in trees, and that's where they'll stay. And then only as it starts to get light will they fly off and land on something like a giraffe or a rhino or a buffalo or impala or zebra even, and then carry on taking the ticks and parasites off the animal. As you can see, he's busy looking for his morning meal. Now I say his, but there's no sexual dimorphism between the male and the female with the oxpeckers, the red-billed oxpeckers, meaning that both the males and the females look exactly the same. Now it looks as if he's found a nice little spot to start picking all of these ticks off. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think giraffes can have something like 200 ticks on them before it's too much. They can carry a what we call a heavy tick load before the amount of ticks starts making them sick, or vice versa. If a giraffe is sick, they will have a higher tick load because their body cannot repel them as easily. So even though something like this oxpecker, I know yesterday afternoon Ralph showed you a really amazing little sighting with an oxpecker picking at the open wounds of a hippo to get that blood out there. So even though the oxpeckers can be somewhat parasitic and can, for something like a hippo, cause those wounds to stay open and become septic, for something like this giraffe, he actually does quite a good job at lightening the load of ticks for him. Although, again, if this giraffe had a wound, he would also keep it open. Snazzy, you're asking quite an interesting question about how do you age a giraffe. So if we can travel up onto that giraffe's head there, Vildy, thank you so much. So can you see on his ossicones, we call them horns for every now and then, but ossicones are calcified cartilage that sit on top of the head. The less hair that is on top of there, that's one way to age them, but it's not going to say, you know, he's 14 years and 1 month. It's just a sort of general appearance, as well as around the face. I don't know if, Snazzy, if you have a dog at home as a pet, or any of you have pet dogs, the older they get, the more gray around the face they start looking. They sometimes even start losing hair, and what you'll notice around the face of a giraffe is it gets quite gray and starts losing sort of texture and hair. And also there on the front of the forehead you can see that bump. They like to chew on bones for the calcium, and that this calcium deposits have a tendency to place themselves on the head. And I've noticed with older male giraffe that they tend to have quite a few bumps up there. And then as we all get older, gravity takes over and your skin starts to sag a little bit more, and your skin gets thinner as well. And so that's also a way to age a giraffe. And then Snazzy, it also just has to do with building up your encyclopedia in your head of here's a baby giraffe, here's a year-old giraffe, here's a 6-year-old giraffe, etc., etc., and noticing condition and sort of general appearance, and then giving an estimate. So giraffes live to be about 18 to 20, roughly right around there. 18 is probably a better guess, and you tend to just know, like, all right, this is an older one, so he's probably older than, I would say this giraffe is older than 15. That would be my educated guess on that. Alright, so he stood still for us for long enough. He's going to start meandering off. Did you notice the gait there? Both left feet and then both right feet. And they move like that to keep themselves balanced and stable. It's called a pacing gait, to move that way. I don't know if any of you out there are equestrians, but I believe it's during dressage, if I'm remembering correctly, that you have a pacing gait that you can get your horse to do. Camels will also move like that, both left feet and then both right feet. Ooh, we've got Brent up in the Mara with some vultures on a kill, so let's head up to him and see what they are doing.
Well, there we go. We've come back to where the hyenas were bobbing for carrion. Now it seems like the hyenas managed to push this carcass onto into the shallow area and drag it out overnight, and there's almost nothing left. Not any hyenas, just the vultures picking off the scraps. So there we go. So it seems like there was a smart hyena after all, who managed to move that carcass away from the deep water. They have the funniest noises that they make, but it seems quite peaceful amongst the vultures. I think they've all having a pretty good feed on what's left. So a lot of the flesh, the little bits that they normally go for, are going to be a little bit softer and easier to get out after being in the water for a few days. Now remember, if you have any questions, hashtag Safari Live. Not much happening here, so I think we're probably going to leave the vultures and we're going to head down towards the mist to see what we can find in the wall of white that is just down below us. You can actually see it now quite clearly. Almost looks like a wave heading towards us. Okay, let us carry on. See what other wonders the Mara has to offer for us today. Bye-bye, vultures. Enjoy your rotten meat. Now, this is, of course, the small sausage territory, with the pale cub, but we haven't seen them for a while. Fern is wondering, can vultures open the skull cavity of their prey? Not even hyenas can open the skull cavity of a buffalo. So there's actually very, very, very specific little carrion beetles that will go into the skull cavity and the nasal and the places that the bigger predators can't get into, and eat all the little bits of gooey brain, sinew and sinus that are left. Okay. Oh, yeah, some muddy. So still lots and lots of water around after all the rain we've been having in the last 10 days or so. And you can see how quickly the grass has grown here. This grass was probably about 5 or 6 centimeters high after the wildebeest left, and it wasn't that long ago, and already it's up to about 30 centimeters. So it's going to make spotting the lions a little bit more difficult, but we do like a challenge. So all the hyenas have moved off. Not much left in that for them. Or there could be another carcass close by that they're enjoying. Joy is wondering, when do plants become invasive in an area? Now, Joy, that's a very good question, because generally when we refer to invasive plant species, we're referring to exotics that were not originally indigenous to an area. They could be from another country, they could be from another part of the country, and they've been moved into an area and they tend to take over a little bit. But indigenous plants can also become invasive under certain circumstances. Now, a very, very good example of an invasive indigenous plant is the sickle bush, or Chinese lantern tree, Dicastacus. Now, in areas that have been overgrazed and the ground and grass cover has been removed, they tend to invade and create a completely impenetrable wall where nothing else can grow. And that's generally from overgrazing or overburning or some form of overutilization. They are what we call a pioneer species, and it takes a very, very long time for those to fall back, because although black rhino and elephant and giraffe will eat Dicastacus, they generally prefer it when it's young, and in areas where it hasn't managed to take over, the elephants and the rhino will keep it quite short and not a problem. But in areas where it's overgrazed and it manages to get quite old and quite big, it becomes quite tasteless to those animals, so they tend to ignore it completely. And what you end up getting is a complete wall of this thorny bush that nothing really eats. Now, Acacia nilotica can also do it. There's quite a few different species that can do it. And that's when it becomes invasive. Generally, an area has been overutilized, and then these pioneer species will take over. Can't believe there's not even a fat hyena lying close by. Okay, well, we're in the sunshine, but we're about to head into that wall of white mist. It sounds like...
So, Brent, I'm glad that you've got some sunshine. We have gale force winds getting blown away. Gale force winds, and it's chilly, chilly, chilly. But it's good to hear that you're getting some good things up there. How amazing were those vultures on that buffalo kill? I wonder if any hyenas will pop up. We are not finding much of anything, sadly. That we had a beautiful black-breasted snake eagle, I think it's now called a black-chested snake eagle, that was sitting on a tree, but he unfortunately got blown away with this wind that has now picked up. I was hoping to show him to you so you could see sort of how beraggled he looked, but he got blown off into an area where we couldn't really see him very well. So I'm just checking our eastern boundary, seeing if anything has popped over, and then we're going to meander down to Chitwa Dam. So while I'm busy searching, let's head on over to James.
What we have here is water. Hooray! Joy, excitement. Happened exactly the same thing to us the last time we came here, Sebastian and I. We arrived at the water, we had a little bit of action in the water, and then that action disappeared entirely. So while Sebastian attempts to remove the fairly substantial cloud that has settled on his lens, hopefully the thing that we were looking at will emerge from the water. Normally you wonder if hippos would survive in the ocean. Well, that question has a number of facets to it. The first one is, can they survive in salt water? Does it affect their skin? The answer is yes, they can. They do. There are parts of West Africa especially where you will find hippo resting in the water from time to time, but it is suboptimal habitat. And the reason it is suboptimal habitat is because, of course, often, the ocean moves. It doesn't sit still like water like this. So you will find hippos in lagoons. You do find them, in fact, in northeastern South Africa and St. Lucia. You will find hippo in salt water. And so, yes, they can survive there. But, I mean, surfing amongst the waves, they're not designed to be amongst the waves. And they're also not designed to be out of their depths. So they need to be within an area that they can stand, or at least sort of reach the bottom and then pop up to the surface. They couldn't sort of survive in 10 or 12 meters of water for very long, because they don't float, you see. Oh, that was entertaining, wasn't it, Seb? That was really fairly astonishing. Sorry about the pole. We must keep saying that to you. The pole is there because we now have a roof on. We have a roof on because of the rain. We have rain, well, because of the water cycle, which I shan't go into now. Very nice example there of the roof. Very nice, gorgeous, really superb interior designing been done on this vehicle. Let's have one last look at our hippopotamus. I have not found any tracks of lions coming to or fro across the Buffelshoek cut line. I've heard that the Styx Pride are on cheetah plains, so we can't go to them. But we'll keep knocking about here and seeing what else we can find. I must confess that the weather today is utterly foul. It is windy, it's cold, it's supposed to be summer. But as Sebastian says, we're not really ever satisfied, because if it's 40 degrees we complain, and if it's cold we complain. Anyway, that's what we are as human beings. I suppose that's the lot of being an animal.
Hello. So we're sitting here listening to this guinea fowl going completely mauled, completely crazy. And we're just trying to have a look and see if we can see what is making it go so completely nutty. And we can't actually see anything that could be giving it such a fright. I have a feeling that it's on this termite mound that's sort of covered by some bushes, and possibly there might be something like a slender mongoose, or possibly it might be a bird of prey perched in one of these trees. But for now, I couldn't actually tell you. And it's funny because he goes and he goes and then he stops, and he goes and he goes and he stops. So I'm not quite convinced it's something like a leopard. I'm more convinced that it's probably, like I said, a mongoose or a bird of prey. So we've been here for a couple of minutes and we haven't seen much. It's now starting to quiet down. So I think let's carry on slowly down the cut line and see if maybe, just maybe, something wants to show itself to us, and possibly at Chitwa Dam, if we could see anything there. But we'll keep our eyes and our ears open, of course. Oh my goodness, the wind. Hold my hat down. Oh, Penny, curious question. So Penny, you're wondering, is there any chances of a drought this year? So Penny, look, the season, we got rain a little bit late, but not horribly late. And if the rain keeps up like this, our season should be okay, but it's still a bit early to tell. We are busy coming into La Nina, which can cause periods of drought and or flooding, depending. So I could go either way for now. So I think let's hold on and we'll see. I'm hopeful that we get lots and lots and lots and lots of rain this year and the water table comes back up. And usually droughts occur in sort of 7 to 10 year cycles, and we did have our bad drought last year, so hopefully we will be off again for a 7 to 10 year cycle, but you never quite know. Especially with all the climate change that's happening worldwide. And there's been some discussion, as far as I'm aware, amongst people who follow La Nina and El Nino and everything that's happening in our world today, about whether or not we're fully coming out of El Nino and fully going into a La Nina. Basically, the conversations happen around, they used to be pretty regular and you could dictate when El Nino was happening and when La Nina was happening. But now everything's a little bit up in the air and it's harder to tell when they're sort of coming and going, and also they are doing it in shorter spans and more often. I will see, Penny, if I can have a little read today. A couple of articles were sent to me by some friends. I'll have a little read today and see if I can come up with any further information other than that. But yeah, so far it's good. So far the rains, if it stays like this, we'll be okay. My goodness gracious, my hat's blowing off my head. But the clouds are lifting. Lifting slowly but surely. Alright, we're almost to Chitwa Dam. Cross over the cut line. Oh, that's an update I have for you. I haven't heard anything on the Angamas, but the Styx Pride is over on Cheetah Plains. So you never know. They might decide to come back and show themselves to us, which would be fantastic because we haven't seen those uber cute cubs in a while. I think maybe about 2 weeks now. Alright, let's head over to Brent, who's getting a tan, while I am busy trying to keep myself dry.
Well, here we go. We're heading towards the wall of white, but it is disappearing as the sun gets higher. It's getting a lot thinner, so hopefully we will be able to spot some stuff through it. It's still an absolutely gorgeous morning here in the Mara. Beautiful. Now, while we're just bumbling along, I'm going to have a little game with everyone. So let's think, what game are we going to play today? I know what game we're going to play. We're going to play the game reserve game. Aha, and we'll start off with an easy one. What is the largest national park in Kenya? Hashtag Safari Live if you know the answer. What is the largest national park in Kenya? Hashtag Safari Live. What is that? What have we got there? A stump. A stump, a lion stump. But we do have some lovely elephants backlit by the morning light. You can see all the dew on the grass, shining bright like a diamond. You can see the riverine forest through the mist in the background. As I said, the mist's clearing quite quickly now, so it looks like we're going to avoid our wall of white. Absolutely gorgeous out here this morning. Consulting detective says, I don't know the answer without Googling. Well, Googling is cheating. Cheating, Google, cheat. Don't be a Google cheat, consulting detective. Isn't that just wonderfully peaceful? Lovely set of ivory on her. Dina, you are 100% correct. It is Savo, and she says she's been there and it's brilliant. Well, I'm a little bit jealous, Dina. I've never been to Savo, but I will be going to Savo for the first time in the new year, which is very exciting. We will actually be there for New Year itself. Okay, let's keep moving as the wall of white lifts and gives us a view of what could be under the wall of white. Now, while we head towards our wall of white, Noel's got something that is black and white.
Lady Starfire, it's your zebra! Yay! Alright, so Murphy has decided to give us a break today and give us something we don't get to see as often as we like. We have a little bachelor herd of zebra. Just before we managed to position or to put our vehicle so that we could view them properly, they were doing a little bit of dominant submissive behavior where one was mounting the other one. Quite interesting behavior, just basically saying, I've got more testosterone than you, and I am going to show you pretty much how much that is. Now we also have wonderful impalas as well as some water buck, all grouped together on this little piece of what we call a fire break. So it's just next to a road. It's been burned at some point to lower the moribund material, basically the load of organic material. So that if we get fires, which usually fire season is sort of August, September, October, right around in there. So if we were to get a fire, it would be less of an issue, would help stop the fire from moving too far. Now, with that sort of burn after a rain like this, you're getting extremely nutritious, tasty green grass shoots coming up. So that's one of the reasons why we're seeing these zebra here. The impala will also partake in that, as will the water buck. And then they're all lumped together, all grouped together today. Because of this wind, like we were talking earlier, the wind takes away their ability to smell and hear properly, and they don't necessarily trust their eyesight. So with these species all together, if one starts alarming, then the rest will be able to jump on the back of those alarm calls and hopefully keep themselves safe. Basically safety in numbers. Just listening for a second. There's some nice bird calls that are starting to come out again. So they'll spend most of their day grazing and ruminating. Not the zebra. The zebras don't ruminate, but the impala and the water buck in this general area. And then a little bit later this morning, they'll probably meander down and have a drink. We've got some beautiful male impala here and a nice bachelor herd. This one in particular just walked behind the zebra, has a stunning set of horns. Now out of this group, look, impala are pretty aware, water buck are pretty aware, but zebra are extremely aware, and zebras actually use their eyesight a little bit more than the other two species. They're related to horses. They're quite intelligent creatures and are quite good at picking up on any sort of scent or sound of predators. Look, it's not that they don't get eaten. They do indeed. But they're very, very, very aware of their surroundings and able to discern quite a bit. Kathy, you're curious as to whether or not zebras have the same number of stripes on each side. Kathy, every single stripe pattern on a zebra is unique, like a fingerprint. So I'm sure there's one or two that might have similar numbers on either side, but in general it's a mix match. I actually personally haven't spent time and counted. They look fairly symmetrical, but if you take a very, very close look, you'll see that each stripe is different. And when you get zebra side by side, the numbers are different. So I doubt that it's exactly the same, but I'm sure you'll see it from time to time, that's for sure. Well, there we go, lovely zebras and water bucks and impala. We're just going to turn around and head towards Chitwa Dam in front of Chitwa Lodge.